Well, Kelly, I was gonna follow up before, and you actually kind of hit it on a little bit when you were talking about hospitality, and it made me think of when you go to a restaurant where you have, a greeter or a hostess there. Do you think that that could be changing things potentially, where it might be a little more digital and things, but also on the other side, you really hit on a big part of the customer service aspect of the hospitality industry, where they want you to be greeted by a person, and I think that might be a give and take. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. What I was reading, we do a lot of restaurants as well, besides the hotels and the whole hospitality market. But even like the Paneras and the Marriotts, whatever kind of aspect it was starting to introduce all of those digital kiosks. I've heard they're completely abandoning those as far as I know. And the idea of they still want that face-to-face contact, but I mean, but one of our clients was joking about just the miles and miles of sneeze guard, whether it's in Vegas or an international hotel that's going to start to be installed everywhere. And I made the joke back that we're going to have to start having beautifully lit sneeze guards or something, because it could become a new design element in all of these projects. That it's a reality, it could happen. But the Cheesecake Factory is one of our clients for the past 20 years, and they're obviously one of the most successful chain restaurants in our country. And it's been really interesting just to hear them talk about how they need to adapt. And the executive that's in charge of their guest relations and their hospitality is basically saying they're already brainstorming. I don't know what these ideas are yet, but they're brainstorming what is the new normal, and how do they start to treat that guest from the moment they arrive to the moment they sit down, and what does that mean for the store layout and everything from the meal to the kitchen to the restrooms. It touches on everything.
I'd say it's even simple things like probably one of the worst germ elements in a restaurant are the menus. So we're already seeing that the restaurants that have opened up are going to disposable menus rather than hard copy ones. Maybe it ends up becoming apps on your phone. So as you sit there, you're flipping through your phone, and then you basically virtually put in your own order. So it's all going to morph, and technology is going to have a big role in this. And it's tough. Restaurants are going to have a hard time because the pro forma, it's about packing them full of people, turning them over multiple times. And now they're going to have less people and the ability to really clean the spaces table by table once the people leave too. And I think that will give a lot of confidence to the other patrons at the restaurant. So I think it'll be a slow ramp up.
Piggybacking off of what Chip said, I think this all leads to when this all first started, I think it's a bigger conversation of health versus sustainability and how those two things are interwoven. Because even in our office, we're a green office, so we're a green company in Long Beach, we're certified, but when all of this started, the paper towels became more important than the Dyson air dry, and just things that spread germs. We had to start making decisions on how do we just treat that in our own office. So it's going to be an interesting hybrid, because sustainability is very important to our planet, but health is the driver right now. So it'll be curious to see what happens with that.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask both of you is, I was reading today that they were talking about how the office life is going to change, and for your physical office, do you see anything changing, anything different, anything you might be putting into place? Because I mean, they're talking about one-way hallways and a lot of different things as far as desk space, and I know a lot of times it's all about collaboration and being in a team setting, and that's going to definitely have some limitations. What are your thoughts?
As far as the office space, I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming up, and whether or not it's exactly 6 foot away, we've actually already gone through our entire office and looking about adding, I'm going to call additional partitions or higher partitions. We're trying to create separation. We were very lucky. We worked on a lot of big and international jobs. So to start working remotely was incredibly easy for us. And actually, we were doing it a week or so before the mandate to do it. But what we found out is there's slight changes. And what we probably have is the luxury of space. Many of our cubicles are 8 by 12, or they're almost like individual offices themselves. So we're not that packed together, but they are looking at it. My daughter works for Gensler, and they're looking at draw a 6 foot circle around everybody, and will that work? And yes, how do you get people so they're not bumping into each other in the corridors? And I think what we did originally, even weeks before going to remote, was we stepped up cleaning. So in other words, not only cleaning restrooms and kitchens, but heavily touched elements. So somebody came in pre-hours, somebody did it at noon, and maybe it's on an hourly cycle where someone goes by and wipes down the printer and wipes down, the copy machine, those elements that everybody is touching and using. And that's going to help tremendously. And what they found with this whole thing is, I think people are going to adopt better hygiene. And at the end of this may really help us through regular flu season and influenza and all of these other things, because everybody's washing their hands now. And if we do more of these elements, we're going to wipe out more and more germs. I don't think the open office is dead, but I think you're going to start to see translucent partitions between people. So you still have the connectivity to daylight, the connectivity to your peers. But once again, as Kelly called it, a sneeze shield between the people, just in case, because this disease is going to morph, and there's going to be other ones after that. I think it's going to have a big impact on things like WeWork, those types of communal working spaces. I think they're going to have the biggest impact versus individual spaces right now, because you don't know who these other people are. And when they get up from the sofa and leave, is somebody going to run right behind them with a squeegee or a squirt bottle and clean the place down? So it would be very, very interesting, but everybody's going to adapt and make it work.
One thing that came to mind that when you were talking, Kelly, that a lot of projects are, I guess you're doing Zoom calls, you're doing Zoom conferences with your clients. Have any of them ever said, you know what, this Zoom thing's really working out for us. We're thinking about actually abandoning the whole office thing and just doing a work from home? Have you heard anybody go to that extreme?
You know what, at the beginning of all this, I thought that was going to happen, but I think we all agree that we can still be efficient working remotely, and but everybody misses the collaboration, right? I just don't think we need to do it as much. I think it's that we joke about being on airplanes all the time, but I think efficiency is going to come into play, and just being respectful of the time and the money that it takes to fly around. A lot of times we say we could have easily just done this on a 1-hour conference call instead of 3 days in whatever country we were sitting in at the time. So I think that's going to become interesting to certain clients when they really think it's necessary. It's lighting design, of course, we have to be there in person. It's architecture, it's construction, it's landscape. We need to see it in person and see the light and really be able to execute our vision and our design. But I do think that the Zoom calls and the go-tos and all the different platforms that we're on every 30 minutes to an hour has proven that you can still get a lot done remotely. So it'll be an interesting combination or hybrid of that as well.
With the project, and you said you have to see the light, obviously, and I think it's interesting. Your firm, you guys have won a lot of awards, and what do you think this is going to do for the awards for all? There's a lot of every region, all the different awards that they have every year. Is this going to be like like in the NHL or the NBA, where the season ends early? If they win, it's an asterisk. It's not a true win because maybe some projects that were supposed to finish aren't getting done. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, the University of Kansas should have won the national championship for basketball, so I'm still a little bitter about that. But yeah, I think Chip, I'll let you speak to the awards a little bit more. I know we're kind of we just did the submittals early this year, but there's not a lot getting built this year. So usually we're really relying on what photographs we can even get or what's completed. But I think a lot of our office, we've also been participating in a lot of online judging, which we were doing even before all of this. But I can let Chip speak to kind of the bigger picture on that as well.
As far as the actual lighting awards go, this year has already pretty much been submitted and judged. And in fact, on a local basis for IES, we already know that I think this year won 6 awards. And in LA, they've combined it with Orange County and Los Angeles, and we have something called Lumen West. What they're saying as far as the celebration is, it's going to be a virtual celebration. So they're actually going to announce all the awards. So the good news is the people that entered and took the time to get the photographs, they'll be acknowledged. Now, it's not going to be a big party where everybody will get together, and I think that's bad, because that's one of the great things about Light Fair or an IALD conference or an IES annual. It's still about getting together and sharing about lighting. We're going to lose that. Now, will it affect future projects? Remember, as Kelly was saying, a lot of the jobs that will be executed in the next year or two are already budgeted. They're already 3/4 built. So I don't think the quality will drop off. I don't think we'll see new cutting edge designs that treat, I'm going to call it COVID-based lighting, whether or not it's UVC, whether or not it's bigger spacing between tables. That's going to take new projects, and they're going to be about a year to 3 years away. But hopefully by then, we have a constant pipeline between the jobs that are already being executed and then the new version that comes through after that. I will say after the financial crisis about 8 or 10 years ago, I guess it was in 2008, I will say that, and being involved as a national or even an international job, the number of landmark projects definitely declined about 3 to 5 years after that. So if they were building a library, it was a nice library, but it wasn't an architecturally significant library. In other words, it was, you could tell that it was designed on the budget. And I think we'll see a lot of those in the next 2 to 3 years. They have a pro forma, they have to meet the performance of the building, but they may lose out on some of the real extraordinary architecture at that point. Hopefully not, but that's what I saw 10 years ago.
How do you design in that environment? I mean, when you guys don't get to use all the cool lights or the most interesting stuff, the design changes. You have to be creative and focus on different things. So yeah, how do you respond as a designer?
Well, I think our real principle, what I was trained originally as a lighting designer by people like Ray Greenwald and Leslie Will, light is a design tool, and it's our job to feature the architectural elements. So we're still going to have a few architectural features from the interior designer, from the architect. Maybe they're not $100 per square foot, maybe they're $50, or maybe they're just textured reclaimed wood. Who knows what it will be? So we still have to identify what are the main features in the space, and where they're spending money, that's probably where we'll spend our lighting budget to really highlight those features. And right now everybody loves visible fixtures and no ceilings, and I'm going to call it the very narrow linear strip lights. Well, we're starting to see pushback because people have lived with those now for 1 to 5 years, and they're saying, oh, those little lights that give 4,000 lumens per inch, they're pretty glary, or these open areas are great, but acoustically they're terrible. So now just look at how many fixtures, throw a little bit of insulation on them and say that's going to solve the problem. So lighting and design continues to evolve, maybe not as fast as we always want it, or not as fast as the LED transformation happened, but all of these environments keep evolving. And a lot of times we go back to what worked really well 20 or 40 years ago too. A lot of those old architects and designers were really smart because they observed and they created spaces for the people.
Sports, we know you're a huge car guy. Do you know what's going on in the world of motorsports these days? I mean, you got natural social distancing. I mean, when you're in LA, bumper to bumper, you're away from people. When you're on the racetrack, you're away from people. Has anything changed in motorsports?
Well, on the West Coast, and I think across the country, a lot of the events have been canceled, even if it's, I call it gentleman racing or vintage racing. All of the tracks have been closed down because while you're in your car, obviously, it's a very safe environment. But you have people together in the pit crews or assisting each other. Once again, what could be the impacts on, let's call it the safety crews. I will make a prediction. Right now, Los Angeles has some traffic, and it's great. You can get around, and people are driving literally. You get past at 120 miles an hour. It's amazing with the freedom that people are feeling. When we recover from this, and it's back to gridlock, I think it's going to be terrible, and people have grown to this freedom, and when they lose it, they're going to go ballistic. So I see a lot of road rage, and I'm just predicting that it's going to be a mess.
In anticipation of this return to traffic, are you going to like convert one of your cars like a Mad Max type vehicle and just take everything out?
He does that anyway. He does that anyway. Before all of this, have you not seen the back of our office?
No, I think that you know, if you watch the news, there's a lot of question about, you know, electric cars and how things will happen. And we've had a Tesla and they have these HEPA filters and things. So you might start to see that technology incorporated more into cars. You know, it's really sad that I shouldn't say sad. It's very sad that the oil prices have dropped so much because it's taken the pressure off of really doing efficient cars. But I think what has happened with the electronic or the electric cars is people can get the performance and be environmentally sound. And that's our ultimate goal, is to protect the planet for the future generations.
It's funny, you know, me and Finn always have a kind of a little quick talk before each one of these and try and have some questions that we think will be good. And as soon as we get into something, like didn't even anticipate Chip being in Vegas, and got into some amazing insight there. And it always goes in a different direction, but it always comes out way better than we plan it. And we get such great feedback from people, and most of the time it has nothing to do with what we planned for any of these calls.
Well, maybe you should be better at your job then. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, you burnt.
No. I think it's good, and I think that this was on. I watched Lee's talk, and it would be really fun to see some real young people's participation, because, you know, us old farts have one point of view, but, you know, I think the biggest impact in what I see, and we try to do these, you know, group calls with all of the employees, it's tough for them being, you know, locked up in their apartments. And a lot of our people don't have big balconies, or they don't have yards and things like that. So, you know, I really think that is going to come back and really be the reason why they want to come back to the office and collaborate. Because I think a lot of our team were looking for, oh, this is great. It proves we can work remotely. And now after, you know, 2 months, they're starting to think maybe it's not the greatest thing. Or, you know, so I think the future will be kind of a hybrid, a little bit of that, or work in the office 3 days a week and remote too. Who knows what it will be, but there's definitely a certain amount of energy and collaboration that happens when you're in the same room and the same space. You can see their facial gestures. You can tell when a client likes an idea or doesn't like an idea, and you just don't get that through the video conference, as good as it's trying to make it work. So I think the future is going to change for all of us, and it's just being adaptable so that we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, well, Chip, Kelly, thank you so much for all the insights you provided here. Been a fantastic talk. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Happy
thank you
to do
both.
it.
Thank you both
Sorry,
for
Bill.
coming on, and really appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thank you both.
Yes, thank you both. It was fun.